I've ever seen anything quite like this before. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
Right, it's on now.
All right. I'm going to do a couple. I'm going to get my half out of the way, or my 0.5. We didn't steer away from the 0.5, so I'll do 0.5 again. And if we don't like it, we'll change it next time.
All right. Moss, your mic's open.
I know.
We're doing, Josh, I don't guess I need the bumpers. We cool with that? We're doing, Josh,
Yeah, we didn't use them last time, I don't think.
The bumpers.
I was just
We cool with
updating the
that?
header in the IRC room.
We're doing,
Yeah, we didn't
Josh,
use them last time, I don't think.
I've got to be good for something around here.
You're useful, Moss. You're useful. Is it to me? Are we ready? Anybody not ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Hey. So I'm gonna do both, so hang on. Welcome to mintCast episode 314. Now I gotta do another one, hang on. Welcome to mintCast episode 314.5. Don't sound alright?
I guess.
Oh well, alright. Okay.
Let's go.
Now I'll do a real one now. Welcome to mintCast episode 314. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. We're in mintcast channel in IRC at irc.spotchat.org. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us on MeWe and Facebook. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. This is Leo, and with me today is Bo.
How's everybody doing?
Moz.
On the hot seat.
Josh.
Hello.
And Joe will be joining us soon. We're recording live on Sunday, July 28th, 2019. First up in our wanderings this fortnight, I migrate my NAS to a much smaller case. Bo has been certifying. Moss is playing with a new laptop. Josh has also been playing around with a new laptop, and Joe guest hosts on Electric City Nerds. Then our news: the Linux Mint 19.2 beta is out. Epic Games gives an Epic grant. Ubuntu 18.10 is in, and the Pinebook Pro is available for pre-order. In our Innard section, we take some time to get to know our hosts, and in this episode, we'll dive into Moss. And finally, all of our feedback.
Ouch!
A cerebral deep dive into the mind of Moss.
Ooh, what will we find? So
A
this
very
past couple
messy
of weeks,
space.
ooh yeah. This past couple of weeks, I ordered a Node 304. So I don't think I've ever really talked about it on this show, but I've talked about my NAS, but not what exactly it is or how it's set up or anything. But it was like this really huge thermal take something. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a mini ITX case. My original intention was to build a mini ITX machine, have as many hard drives in it as I possibly can. And that's kind of a task to do with mini ITX in the first place. But I finally found a machine or a motherboard that had 6 SATA ports and then 2 what seemed to be like eSATA ports. And it was great. It was actually great. But the case that I bought with this entire build was way bigger than what I had expected in, I guess, what the pictures showed, really, I guess is the idea. But anyway, so I build this thing and it's huge, right? I mean, it's bigger than a full ATX case. So I I keep it. I don't bother changing anything, but it's taking up all this space, right? So this, I guess it was about 2 years old anyway. But this past month, I decided I was going to get a Node 304, which is a case that has slots for 6 hard disks and will take a mini ITX motherboard. It's extremely small. And it's so small that when it came in, I realized I couldn't port everything over one-to-one. I had a CX430 as a Corsair power supply, full size. And it said it supported full-size ATX power supplies. So I pop it in and realize that the way that my SATA ports are on my motherboard is not going to allow me to use this power supply. So they're pointed to the side instead of like plugging your SATA port directly into the motherboard from the top. They're like at a right angle off of the side, and this butts up exactly against the power supply. So there's no way for me to actually get this in and have SATA cables. Not even the right angle SATA cables would fit. There's literally no room. So I had to go back to Amazon and ordered I think it was an SF450. So about the same power, about the same wattage, but this is a gold power supply, so a bit more efficient than the bronze I was coming from. And it's modular, so I didn't have that either. So it was a bit of an upgrade, and it was a small form factor power supply. So I think it gave me, what was it, like 250 or... oh no, it was 25 millimeters more, I think. So that's about an inch extra that I had to play with. Anyway, so this allowed my SATA cables to get in and maneuver around, and that was great. So now I have my NAS in a very small case, but I have the ability to add in, I think it's 2 more drives. I was already at the capacity of my previous case, even though the thing was so huge. And this mini ITX case finally gave me, oddly enough, more room to put stuff in. So anyway, that was kind of a fun issue to work through, and I didn't intend to buy another power supply, but I guess if I wanted the small case, I had to have it. And then I realized that this power supply only gave me one set of 4 SATA cables. One of them wouldn't reach, so the other 3 are powering my spinning disks. I had to use the old Molex style, an adapter, to get my system drive actually up and running. So anyway, if I want to add more drives, I'm going to have to use another adapter. But either way, good airflow, small case. I'm happy with it overall.
Is that
Anyway.
something you can? Is that something you can buy separately? Like, since it's a modular power supply, can you buy the extra module for SATA, or is the plug at the other end different?
So that was my original thought. I was like, oh, maybe I'll have more room, but it turns out no. There is only one. Well, okay. There are 2 what they call accessory spots, I guess, on the power supply, and one of those I'm using for SATA, and one of those I'm using for the Molex. So I guess I could go all SATA, but there is a fan controller in the back of this Node 304 that controls all 3 fans. There's just not enough ports on any mini ITX motherboard that I've seen to have that many fans. So it's got a controller, and that's run by Molex. So I'm kind of stuck. I have to use Molex, so the only way around it is to use adapters, unfortunately. Well, moving on, Bo has been certifying. Tell me about this. What's been going on?
Oh man, I wish this had not been going on. Wish I didn't have this story to tell, but I've been studying since the last episode and taking a certification. It's actually the certificate for the IPS product that I discussed on the last episode. So I spent a month studying. I was in an in-person class for 3 days, and then I took the test, and I had to make a 70 to pass, and I made a 68. And it was soul crushing to not pass after all of that preparation. And I barely missed it, but at the same time, I was expecting to really do well. And so I've spent the last week. That was not this past Friday, but the Friday before that I took the test and found out that I didn't make it. and I've spent the last week up until Friday, whenever I finally took my second attempt, just basically like reading over the book, looking at practice questions, and just trying my best to retain as much of the material as I can. But I really feel like I'm really learning to take the test. And so what I kind of wanted to bring up to you guys was, how often do you feel like with these types of certifications, you're studying to pass the test as opposed to studying to learn the actual material?
No, that's basically every time. It really is. I was even going to ask if you had looked online to see if there were any practice tests out there.
Yeah, there's really not. The company that it's a specific brand certification, and so it's not like it's not like a CCNA or anything like that where it's popular enough that there would be practice exams. So I only have what they've provided on their website to rely on. And taking the test for the first time, I was able to remember some of the questions, so I was kind of able to use that. Now that I've seen the test, I could better prepare. One thing was, before I actually took the first attempt, I didn't realize that the tests were going to be so specific towards specific scenarios, whereas the book seems to be really broad and sort of like from a very high conceptual level. Here's the way things work. And so I think taking it once and failing, although I wish I had passed, I'm thinking that helped prepare me, because now I knew what types of questions I needed to be studying for. But another side of this is like, I've never really in college I had to study a little bit, but in high school, like, I never studied. And even in college, I really didn't learn to study well. And that was years ago. So like, I don't even know how to study well. Like, I'm basically just reading this book and then writing things down that seem important. And I'm hoping that writing is what is committing it to memory, but I don't really have a really good process for this.
Yeah, writing is really one of the things that helps me out a lot. And then kind of for my job, I do have to go back and get certified for random stuff. And Microsoft tests are like what you're describing, where they give you I hate the Microsoft tests the most, and because their questions are extremely long. We're talking like 3-4 multi-sentence paragraphs that it's there to kind of like throw you off. It's there to give you too much information and make you waste time reading.
Right.
And I guess what you're meant to do is kind of get to the heart of the situation and figure out what's actually wrong. And they change it up. So if you've taken two things kind of hamstring you on these Microsoft tests, like if you've taken them before, like not the same test, but the one before it, if you're recertifying on the new version or something, you'll likely get some questions wrong, because they'll have very similar questions, but they will change the answers. And those answers will be like, it used to be that you went into like add and remove users and groups. Now you do that through Server Manager, or you do that through what is it, Active Directory users and computers or something like that. I forget the name of the utilities, but the question's the same and the answer is slightly different because, well, now they want you to use this new tool. And totally, granted, I accept that. And then the other is that they totally throw you off, so it makes you waste a lot of time. Kind of digging down to the heart of it. So I really don't like those tests at all. It's really hard to study for that kind of thing. But for more straightforward tests like CompTIA or Cisco, writing is what helps me. Writing down what it is that I'm learning, especially if I don't remember it. And pacing myself 1 hour a day. 1 hour a day every day, except for maybe Sunday or something like that, where I can take a break.
Yeah. I think that's another place that I kind of dropped the ball, because we have some big projects coming up in August and September. So I knew that I wouldn't have time to commit to this. So I basically tried to cram like 4 or 5 hours a day of study time for an entire week and then take the test on Friday. And I actually think that if I had studied maybe 2 hours instead of 4 or 5, I would have retained about the same amount of material. I think I just read through a lot of stuff and said, oh yeah, I understand what I'm reading, but I didn't really memorize it. And so I think I should have done shorter, more often, but shorter sessions. I think would have been better. But I've taken it the second attempt. I don't know my results until tomorrow, and I feel a whole lot better than the last attempt, and I only have to make up 2 points, right? Like this should totally be doable. But I won't know till tomorrow. But I'm confident. I'm not extremely
luck,
confident,
Bo.
but I'm confident. Well, it's done now. Whether pass or fail, I've taken the test. It's locked in. I'm just waiting to find out my results.
Yep, final answer. Whew. And I guess oh well, I was gonna say something, and now I forgot what I was gonna say.
Well-
Yeah. What I was gonna say was everybody has their kind of drop off where you're studying, and then anything that you put in just falls right out. And
Yeah.
for me, that's about an hour and a half to 2 hours, somewhere in there. So I try and get well before that, just so I know that I'm gonna actually retain what it is that I'm looking at.
I definitely felt that for sure. But anyway, so everybody, give me good vibes tomorrow about 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will
Good
know
vibes, good vibes.
whether I pass or fail. But Moss, what have you been doing this week?
I've been playing with my new laptop. It's a Lenovo IdeaPad 110 ACL 80TJ with all AMD chips. I did it for you at Tux Digital. It isn't quite as robust as my T430, but I needed a larger screen and a full keyboard, and it was the price of a Pine book. There have been a lot of revelations, and I think I'd do better blogging them or sharing them on the Discord group than talking about everything.
Now, is this
Yeah.
one of the idea pads that folds backwards with a touchscreen?
No touchscreen on this one. But it's probably the same form factor.
Okay, I just remember selling those when I worked at Best Buy.
Yeah. The biggest issue is with the Realtek Wi-Fi modem, which according to some distros is broken and I need to load an open source driver for it. Other distros just see it as broken and say you have no Wi-Fi. But here's this. Linux Mint sees it, loads the driver, and goes right on with the installation like there was nothing wrong. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a win.
I managed to get Open Mandriva LX4 to install fully on the new machine, but it didn't write the boot sector correctly. And with that, I lose all ability to boot. I'm trying to find a fix for that in their forum. Some users are saying I need to have secure boot enabled. Others say disabled, but secure boot does not look to be the issue. It's just writing the boot in a different location than where the machine is looking for it. And we'll have to figure that out. For now, just to get some plasma love, I put KDE Neon on that partition. It seems to be running well. Moving along, for now, the TV that I bought my wife as a belated birthday present, which would not be recognized as a VGA monitor except at 1024 by 768 by her T430, required us to purchase mini DisplayPort to HDMI adapters, and now we're both on HD. It has made a clear difference in our TV viewing on my 32-inch TV monitor, although I wouldn't have cared enough to buy the adapter if it weren't for my wife's issue. Amazon had a set of 2 adapter cables for not much more than the price of one. So now I get to go try to install Open Mandriva LX4 on the T430 again and see if the external monitor is not an issue. Well, I tried it this morning. It was. For a change, I got all the wallpaper and the mouse movement instead of a black screen with mouse movement, but it still would not install. It wouldn't click anything I clicked, nothing happened. So I am back to their forum for that one.
So this is an HD but non 4K TV, right?
Right. It goes up to 1080p.
And you've plugged your device that you're plugging into it, your laptop, you've plugged it into other monitors with a similar resolution by any chance?
No. But what I did, I was running it as a VGA monitor.
Okay.
And as a VGA monitor, I got black screen and the mouse cursor moved, and that was it. I then mentioned that on the forum, and Ron Bullard, who's one of the main commenters there, said that he tried it with HDMI monitor and did not have the problem. And so now I've got an HDMI monitor and I still have the problem, just a little bit better.
It just seems to me like you're getting a mouse movement, and you're getting the wallpaper even in the other case. So the TV seems to be detecting the right input. It seems like there's something going on, maybe software wise, with why it's not transitioning to that screen the way it's supposed to.
And
So-
that's what user forums are for.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could try it on another display just to rule out anything between the TV and there.
Well, the only other display I have I have successfully installed it using no monitor, just using the laptop. Yeah, using the laptop monitor, it works fine. Going to an external, it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know what to try next.
Well, moving along, Distro Hoppers Digest will be recorded this Wednesday. That is the day after this episode should hit the podcatchers. It will be different, and despite being longer than since the previous episode, it may feel rushed. And the reason it will probably feel rushed is I'm still working full time. It hurts, but it pays okay. Someday in the future, the other part-time person will be hired and start, but it's not going to be this fortnight. I'm supposed to be part-time. The district manager won't let my manager hire any other person.
Yeah, I've been in that situation. I'm kind of in that situation now with my work. I get to take over a lot of other work that wasn't originally mine here lately. So I've been
Without any increase in pay.
Oh, of course. Why would they do that? The contract says
we'll
other
eventually
duties
bring
as
somebody
assigned.
We'll eventually bring somebody in one day.
Right. Not
I
in
swear.
time to get anything done, but sure, definitely.
So while we're playing with new Lenovo laptops, what are you doing, Josh?
Yeah, so I won a competition 4 weeks ago now, and the prize was a new Lenovo laptop. They didn't actually tell me the model until it like the day before it arrived. So, but they said the price. So I went onto the Lenovo website and saw that I would probably get their C940, I think it is. So I looked at that and I thought, oh well, that looked really nice. And I've always wanted a ThinkPad for about 6 years now, just because they look cool. And this laptop showed up, and it was a Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Yoga. So it's basically the same as the X1 Carbon, but it has a 2-in-1 form factor, so you can put the screen back and it's 360 degrees. And I thought, oh well, that'll just be a gimmick, I'll never actually use it. But I found myself using it like most days when watching a YouTube video or something like that. So it has some really nice features. It's the X1 Yoga 3rd Gen, so last year's model. So it's a 14-inch screen. It's got an i7 8650. It's got 8 gigs of RAM and a 512 gigabyte SSD. So all in all, it's really nice, and the screen's 2K as well. Not quite 4K, but the keyboard is the best ever.
Yeah, the best thing about the ThinkPads has always been the keyboards.
Yeah, like I was surprised at how good they were, because I've never actually tried a ThinkPad keyboard. So that was definitely really nice, because I normally hate laptop keyboards, but this one's quite nice to type on.
Yeah, the keyboard on my IdeaPad feels like I'm almost typing on a membrane. It's just clap, 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 clap. Whereas you can hear the way I can go on this ThinkPad.
Yeah, the keyboard on this is definitely better compared to most laptops. And also the port selection, like ThinkPads are obviously business laptops. So it was quite nice, considering my last laptop had only 2 ports and that was it. This has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, one of which is for charging, 2 USB-As, a full-size HDMI, and a headphone jack as well. and this really weird Ethernet connector that you have to buy like a $30 adapter for. So I just went for a USB-C one, because I don't want to buy their stupid adapter that when I get a new laptop in 5 years' time, I won't be able to use.
Josh,
Yeah, I
do
know
you
that
have a
feeling.
touch point on that?
The
Most
tou-
of the ThinkPads come with a touch point.
Oh yeah, so it has a touch point as well. I use it on and off. The thing I don't like about the keyboard is the fact that the control and function keys are switched around compared to normal laptops. So in the BIOS, you can just change that. Because I don't look at the keyboard when I type, it was getting all confusing. With that, I might learn it one day though. But the touch point's nice as well. And today, before the show, I installed Deepin on the laptop, which runs really nice. But then when I went back into Windows, it said BitLocker. It asked me to enter a key with a blue screen. And at this point, I was like, oh well, Deepin Chinese spyware confirmed now. It's locked my computer out.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is that I had to go into my Microsoft account and there was a key in there, and I had to type it in and it let me back in. I'm not sure why it did that. I think it changed something, and it messed something up. But that was quite scary. But I managed to get that back. I've had two things fail on me this week. My GPU failed earlier in the week. AMD RX 580 from Gigabyte. And it had random yellow and green dots and a white overlay on every single game that I tried to play. So
Did you verify it wasn't your cable?
yeah, I've tried 3 different monitors, all different cables, and every single port on the GPU, and everything showed the same thing. So that's been sent back to the warehouse where I bought it from, and hopefully they'll either refund me or send me a new one. If they were to refund me, I'd probably get a 1660, the Nvidia card, just because it's better specs for the same price, and it looks like a
Right,
better deal.
The 1660 is their new low-cost one.
Yeah,
It's based on the 2600 line, but doesn't do the ray tracing.
yeah, that's right. So that looks quite a good option, but they'll probably just replace it, even though they don't make it anymore. I've also had to return my phone, Google Pixel 3. It wouldn't actually connect to any 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi points. It's had this issue since I bought it, and I finally got round to sending it back. The weird thing is I had to ship it to Poland, because they have no UK warehouse. So that was slightly weird, but luckily they paid for that, and a new phone should be on the way. So I'm using my old Huawei at the minute. So I'm being spied on with Deepin on my laptop and having a Huawei phone. So that's really great. What has Joe been up to this week?
Well, mostly I've been, really boring. Haven't gotten around to much. I listened to the Spellsinger novels by Alan Dean Foster, but if you want to hear my opinion on it, you can catch my guest spot on ECN with Bo, where we talked a lot of nerd.
Always.
And once again, somehow I sounded knowledgeable when I listened to it. It was weird,
I'm really good at editing you to sound knowledgeable.
right?
Now, I issued you a challenge in the last mintCast, and you stepped up to the plate and tried to defend a awful show. But you
what
did a
show was
really good
that?
job. Red Dwarf, of course.
That's not an awful show,
Yeah, it was really great
Yeah,
having you
don't
on.
knock
Though.
my Red Dwarf.
right?
I'm still knocking it, baby.
Well, there's no accounting for taste. Okay. Well, and then other than that, I had fun at the local lug where we were having a discussion on the difference between Docker and virtualization. Just helping out some people with basic Linux installs and trying to get everything set up right. I helped one guy install Linux Mint 19.1, because I had a copy of that on the laptop I had brought with me. And yeah, it was generally fun. And then this last Thursday, I went to Thursday Night Gaming, and we played One Night Werewolf. And it's really too complicated to try and explain right now. And it's basically a werewolf game, but it's meant to be played in 10 minutes or less. And then also played Pandemic with a few other people, and that is a really fun game, but you kind of have to think about it as a risk and reverse, and you're trying to keep the tokens from taking over the board. That's about the easiest way I can explain it. And then I bought a bunch of 16 gigabyte micro SD cards so that I could do various builds on the Pis that I currently have while I'm waiting for the Pi 4B to be available near me. Because I did see it online where you could buy it and it would ship on July 31st with like $15 shipping. But if I wait till it gets to Micro Center again, I won't have to worry about the shipping, and they tend to offer deals the first couple of weeks it's out. So
$15 shipping?
Yeah, $15 shipping.
That makes the Pi 50 and change. What?
Yeah, well, when you're looking at the 4 gigabyte model, it makes it a bit more than that.
Yeah, what is that, like 15 extra bucks or 20 extra bucks? What? Yeah, 20.
Something like that.
Ah, no. Yeah, okay,
And it's
yeah,
not
I would wait
terrible,
for
but
Micro
if I'm having
Center.
it's not terrible, but if I'm having to wait anyway, then why not wait until it shows up at Micro Center?
Yep, agreed.
And
Wait
then
until
I'm
someone bequeaths me a ton of money so I can afford one.
Right. And then I also started moving some of the applications that I use to App Image, and I'm working on syncing all of those app images across all my machines using BT Sync. And I know that that's my go-to right now, and I haven't set up OwnCloud or anything like that, even though I do want to test them out one of these days. And, you know, it's nice because I only have to install an application once. Well, you're not really installing it with App Image, but you know what I'm saying. I only have to get an application once, and then that application is on all my machines. Also, went to Medieval Times with the wife, and we had a blast. It was my birthday celebration, so we sat in the front row. I don't know if you've been to Medieval Times, but it is interesting. And if you don't know what Medieval Times is, just go watch The Cable Guy. Also, I bought another set of messed up Bluetooth headphones. Only paid $18 for it total after shipping. And it had like 8 or 9 different devices in it. It wasn't much, but it didn't cost much either. But I was still kind of disappointed in it because I wasn't able to get any of them to work. And now the ones, most of them, like the Skull Candies, were very glued together and nearly impossible to take apart. And by the time you got them taken apart, there wasn't really any way that you were going to get them back together. And a lot of it is where they put the batteries. When the batteries go bad, you can't really replace them and get everything put back together. I don't know if they do that on purpose or if it's just a function of how small it is, but it is annoying. And now there was one set that I thought I would be able to fix where one side wasn't working, and it was the side closest to the controller board. So I just figured it was a loose wire or something as opposed to a cut wire because, you know, it's only like 2 inches of wire instead of being all the way on the other side from the controller board where it has a lot of room to break. And this was the Samsung MDR AS600 BTs. And I got the one side taken apart where the controller board was and the non-functioning speaker. And I tested both ends with another earbud that I had split just for that purpose. And both ends of the cable worked. So that says, bad speaker in general. Okay, well, that's a difficult fix, but not an impossible one. So I took apart a couple other earbuds to try and test out, but they were all too large. And then I did finally find one that was the right size, and I got it put together. Well, I got that on and I got it working, and then I started putting the plastic back together so that it would sit right, and it just started disintegrating. The plastic just started disintegrating. And I got it put back together well enough that I could have gotten some glue and had it all hold together. But I tested one more time, and once again, it wasn't working. So I started taking it back apart, and when I fixed it, evidently one of the cables ended up too short to be both connected to the speaker and connected to the board, so it popped right off. It was like 6 hours worth of work total out in my 100-degree plus garage over 2 days, and I was, needless to say, a bit angry, and threw it away. And now I have what I affectionately call Nintendo thumbs.
Well, I gotta
Wait, hold
thank
up.
you for the
Were
two
they all-
that you sent me.
Yeah.
We haven't charged up the ear candy yet. My wife doesn't seem to be as interested as I'd hoped. The insignia works great, except the volume up button is broken. Doesn't even
okay.
push. But just so what? I can turn up the volume on the phone if I have to. The
Yeah.
volume down button and the on-off button work fine. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Joe, have you watched those YouTube channels where they buy the blind lots from Amazon? Like basically, you pick like a category, and then you pay a certain amount, and they send you like a ton of different products for
No,
really cheap, but you
I've
have no
seen
idea
where-
what they're going to be.
Right. I've seen where people have bought like boxes of returns, but you generally have
Right.
an idea of what they are. They'll show you the top of the box opened, but then they won't show you the bottom. And I haven't seen all of the videos on that. I haven't gone out of my way. I think I've seen like 1 or 2 videos on that, and it is something I would enjoy doing, but they pay a lot more than
Yeah.
I usually want to. I mean, you're looking at a couple of $100s there, and then you never know if you're going to get anything worthwhile.
I have a YouTube idea for you. If you were to start doing the bulk purchases of returns, but then making videos about how you repair them, I think that not only would you be able to resell stuff, but I think that might get a lot of traction on YouTube. I love watching those videos because I watch them just
Right.
like, what's he going to pull out of the box next? Oh, it's just a phone case. Who cares? Oh, but it's a Bluetooth speaker. There's plenty of people out there that are addicted to those videos, and if you added the element of fixing them and making videos about how you repaired them, or combine two to make one working one, and all that sort of stuff, I can see you being really good at that.
Well, I watch a lot of My Mate Vince and what's that? Tronics Fix, and they do similar things to that. They'll buy specific items just to repair them and then turn around and resell them.
Yeah.
Let me put in a pitch here for LBRY. I know a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's like YouTube, except that they actually are not part of Google, and they are not stealing your data, and they are paying the content providers.
What is this? What's it called?
LBRY. You can get a desktop app for your for Linux Mint, or you can run it from your browser.
Drop a link.
Okay.
Yeah, stick
In the
that in the
show
check
notes.
this out section too.
Yeah.
And so Nintendo thumbs, right? This is where your thumbs are like super raw and messed up because you've been
No,
messing around with the
where you
joystick
get
forever.
those calluses on them that you could practically push a needle through something with.
Oh yeah. Okay.
See, I don't know how many of you guys were around in 1986 when the Nintendo first hit the market. I know Moss was there, but I don't know if you had one or not. But it didn't take real long for these giant calluses to form on your thumbs from hitting the buttons. I mean, there was no rubberizing of those buttons. They were hard plastic, and you got calluses.
Yeah, I remember the original one, and when I was younger, it didn't actually affect me. But now I try to use one of the original controllers, and one of those corners like just poke really hard into my palm, and I can't stand it for very long.
Did the Nintendo really come out in '86?
Yeah, I believe it
Something like
was
that, yeah.
86. Somebody might want to verify that, but yeah. Because I would have been 5 in 1986, so...
Well, I had a couple extra questions that I was like working around in the show notes, and I forgot to ask these questions. So, Josh, on your laptop, you have a 2K screen, right? So that's 1440p.
Yeah.
Do you scale that at all?
Yeah, it is. So
Oh,
I
okay.
did originally not scale it. I did have it at 100%, and it was just too small. It brings me on to the point actually. There was an LTT video this week on the Razer Blade 2019 that had like a 4K OLED panel, and they mentioned in that like laptops don't really need 2K and 4K screens, because at the distance you sit and how small the screens actually are, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, and you're sacrificing graphics performance for something that you don't really need. So I kind of agree on that 1080p is like where laptops should kind of stop. It might be quite a controversial comment, but I just think that 2K in laptops is a bit too much for how small the screens actually are.
Yeah, I'll stand in the line of fire with you on that one. I think 1080p at 14 inches is probably as low down as you want to go, because at that point you're really starting to have to consider whether you want to scale or not, and then depending on your desktop environment, that may or may not be easy.
And it's
So
better for battery power anyway. As long
yeah,
as, you know, your HDMI output can handle the higher outputs. And yeah, I'll get behind you guys on that one.
yeah, I'm on a 1440p screen at 32 inches though on my desktop, and I think that's about perfect. But it's huge. It's like it's over twice as big as my laptop screen, like actually inches wise. So yeah, I couldn't imagine that on a 14, 15-inch screen. That just blows my mind. And Joe, about your Docker thing, you were talking about Docker and virtualization and the difference between the two. Did you convert anybody?
No, that really wasn't what the conversation was about. I mean, we were talking about Docker, and then they started comparing it to virtualization, and I was making the statements that it's not really virtualization; it's containerization using built-in functions that are already in Linux, just to isolate your applications. And yeah, that was all
And
the conversation really centered around.
that's when I take the opportunity to heap a bunch of software onto them and be like, look, try this and try this and try this and try this, and you can just do it with a Docker run. Ooh, look at this, and then yeah, try and convince them, like go use some Docker, man. And
Yeah.
about the app images, you were saying that you use BT Sync to move your app images from machine to machine so it's consistent across. Where do you put them?
What do you mean?
Like on the file system, where do you put your app images?
Well, it was on just a folder on the desktop.
Okay, so you stick it in your home folder.
Yeah.
I put it when I do app images or any kind of binaries like that. Like Telegram is just a straight binary that you run. It's probably similar to app image anyway. I don't know how they do it, but when I do that, I stick it in my home folder, and in a inside of there is a directory called bin, all lowercase. And what I've found is that pretty much every operating or every version of Linux you use will automatically add that after a logout login to your path. So you don't have to go in and jack around with the path at all. It just after a logout will find it if there's stuff in that bin folder. So everything for me is go ahead.
That is interesting. I mean, because a lot of times you can't find the app images when you do your super key and search. And sometimes even if you tell it to remember that particular app image, you'll come back later and it won't be there.
Yep. So worst case scenario, when you put your app images in that bin directory in your home folder, you can do an Alt F2 and then type the app image name and it'll find and run it. So really interesting thing. That's what I took to put in my app images. So yeah, try it if you haven't. It's really nifty.
Yeah, I'll give it a try.
All right, and I guess that's it for our wandering, so we'll head into the news. All right, and we have a handful of news articles that came across our radar, and the first one that we got was Epic Games backs Blender Foundation with $1.2 million in Epic Mega Grants. And the first thing I thought on this one was like, oh my god, they named it Mega Grants. What's up with this? And then I realized that it was like a mega, like it was $1 million or whatever it was. Whatever mega is, that's how much money they have in this grant to give out to other companies. So I was like, okay, it's not just straight marketing. I get it. That's cool.
Well, don't forget, Epic Games does not like Linux.
It's not that they
Well,
don't
I
like
don't
Linux,
know.
it's that they're not
Yeah.
willing to put forth the effort on their end to make their stuff work on Linux.
Tim or Tom, whatever his face is, Sweeney. I see him tweet every now and then, and he'll say something like, "You need to support open platforms," and then that'll just leave everybody in the entire conversation running on Linux slack-jawed because they're like, "Yeah, do it," because the Epic launcher doesn't work on Linux. So I can totally see how it doesn't look like he cares or anything, but I mean, by throwing $1 million to Blender. I don't know. He's kind of putting his money where his mouth is, but I wish it would be a more fully fleshed out version of support openness, right? Because I guess this is really self-serving though, right? Because if they fund Blender, then they can go and stand toe to toe with like Maya and 3ds Max and things like that. And I guess this just prevents Epic from having to build their own and make it a proprietary solution. They just give money to Blender and see what they can do with it. Does anybody play any Epic games?
Well, not yet, but since I am dual booting, I am considering getting Epic for the launch of Borderlands 3, just so I can get it sooner, instead of waiting the 6 months for it to come to Steam.
Yeah, for sure. So that means you'll have to install Windows, right?
I have Windows installed because the Commander Lilith DLC for Borderlands 2 still doesn't work on Linux that I've seen. So
Oh yeah, you said that. I forgot about that.
yeah, I fixed my dual boot. And it's
Yeah,
a
that's-
pain to switch operating systems in order to play and then switch back to podcast and do everything else that I do, but still, I enjoy playing it, so
My most hated thing about swapping operating systems is that I miss the key when you start up your machine. I miss the key, so I can't do it, and it just drops me into Linux. And I'm like, no, but I actually wanted Windows this time.
well, what do you have your timing set up as? Like 3 seconds or something?
No, it's not Grub. I use I just go straight primary
hard drive
partition.
to hard drive, yeah.
Yep. So it's my motherboard's.
Right, you got to hit
I
your
don't know,
F12 or your F2 for your
Yeah.
boot order.
Yeah, it's F11 for my desktop and it's Enter for my laptop. But yeah, I get it maybe 2 seconds, maybe. But I'm always
Yeah.
looking the other way or like off and somewhere.
Well, then fix your grub.
Yeah, just set up
Or I
Grub.
could fix my brain. Yeah,
your Grub.
but I like Grub to be instant. I like it to not ask me at all because I want the question once and I just have them fully separate. I don't want Windows breaking Grub ever.
Well, like
It's
I said,
always
last
easier to
time
fix grub than your brain, Leo.
Yeah,
last
you're
time
probably
I
right about
installed,
that.
it didn't mess with my grub at all. It was kind of nice. And it used to
Well,
be back
I've-
in the day, if you even looked at Windows, there would be some updates that would mess up your grub.
Yeah, I've never really had any issues with Grub, but I don't know. The amount of horror stories that I hear on the internet, the amount of times that you have to run Grub Rescue or do some other kind of fishy business to make Grub work, it put me off to the whole idea. So Windows is siloed off in its own little thing, and I choose the disk when I want to boot into it. But 99% of the time, I'm booting into Linux. So if I just turn my machine on, it goes straight into it with no real waiting or anything like that. No Grub waiting either. It's instant.
You know what you could do? On the you could put a switch, a physical switch, in line with your SATA connector. Separate out the power line on there, and then when you want to load Windows, just turn it on.
Yeah, that might actually not be a bad idea. But my Windows is an M.2. It's the SATA style though, so it's a bit slower, I guess. But I guess the switch turn off the Linux disk might be.
No, not to turn off
that-
the Windows disk, just to turn. You set your boot order so that your Windows is actually first, and then you just turn it off when you want to load Linux, and then turn it on when you want to load Windows. But the other way works too.
You're talking about making a physical switch, right?
Yes.
Huh, interesting. Yeah,
That way
never
you're
done
not
anything like that
disconnecting and
before.
reconnecting the SATA connector every time.
Right.
Sounds like you're asking
Interesting.
for trouble though, just interrupting power to a hard drive.
But you turn it off first.
I don't know. That seems like a lot of trouble. Just fix Grub.
I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'd rather just forget and then have to reboot.
Move along, nothing to see here.
So the other thing we have is Linux Mint 19.2 beta is out. Did anybody give this a go?
Nope.
Me
Tony
either.
Hughes did.
Oh, and of course he's not here. Okay. Yeah, well, I definitely didn't hear any screeching in Discord or anything like that, so it doesn't sound like it went bad.
Well, he
Yeah.
said he didn't have any problems at all with it.
Everybody said it's a very incremental update. Like, there's not much that changed.
Except
stuff
in
that we covered.
Cinnamon.
Yeah, the stuff
Si-
that we covered last show is really the only thing that changed, but they weren't huge, crazy changes or anything like that.
Well, Cinnamon had complete upgrades, and everything else we don't know anything.
The other two are out there. It kind of defines exactly what's changed in each DE, and a lot of the stuff is crossover. So a lot of the things that changed on the Cinnamon side also change in the other ones as well, except for cinnamon specific stuff, obviously.
Yeah, be careful saying crossover.
But if you want, you can test out all of the new features that we covered in the last episode. But remember, beta is a beta, right? So that means it might cause issues in your day-to-day kind of thing. But if you're going to try it, just make sure that you don't mind a bug or two, right? Make sure that this is not on a machine that you are extremely attached to the data on. And if you do try it out on one of those machines like that, make sure you're time shifting. Make sure you get to keep all your data in case something goes wrong. But I think I've seen a few people on the internet, like on Reddit and in, I think it was on Twitter, that said that they tried out the beta and nothing to report outside of the new features are there. So it seems like a pretty stable, but it says beta, so back your stuff up. And Ubuntu 18.10, end of life. It's over. So back up. Yeah. So back up your important stuff, speaking of backing up. And if you haven't already gotten the message, you probably should have if you're running on 18.10. It's probably been nudging you for a while now. But if you haven't gotten the message to upgrade, do and I've got this in the show notes, sudo do release upgrade -c to check and see if there's anything out there for you, and then do sudo do release upgrade to actually get up to 19.4. But if you're in the GUI and you don't like a terminal, you can just go to the Updates tab of the Software and Updates app and make sure the notification option is set to for any new version. Close and check for updates with the Software Updater app, and you'll be good to go. It'll take care of you. We also have the Pinebook Pro available for pre-order. Moss, you were saying that you were taking a look at this.
Oh, everybody wants one. I don't have $200, though.
And they went with the 1080p screen, it seems like. They went with the as far as you should go.
Well, Zeb on Destination Linux actually had his hands on one for a weekend, and they said that the guy that gave it to him said that we've got all this, and this that are already updated from what you're holding, and he was just blown away by the machine. So,
yeah, for $200, you can't really go wrong. But one of the things that I saw, well, I guess before we get into that, we're talking a quad-core Cortex A56 or A53, sorry, CPU, quad-core Mali T860 GPU. Though I don't know how fast that thing actually is, but it sounds like it's not bad. 4 gigs of RAM,
Well,
64
zapping,
gigs of storage. But if
you
you're
were
a Pine
holding it-
64, go ahead.
got a $450 machine in your hand.
Oh yeah. And it also looks like you get a free 128 gig upgrade if you're a Pine 64 community member.
That's
And
only
they
on
do-
pre-orders.
Oh right, yeah, exactly, definitely. And then they also stress that you need to be okay with a dead pixel or two. If your unit comes with a dead pixel, you need to be all right with that. If you plan on, I think they mentioned up to 3. If you plan on asking for a refund or a chargeback for up to 3 dead pixels, just don't buy it. But I mean, you really can't get away with that. Get much more value in a $200 laptop, though. So I mean, I think I'd be all right with that. For $200, I'd be all right with that. And the last thing we have on the list is Windows WSL2 gives custom kernel choices. So they're going to ship with, I think it was 4.19 in WSL2, but it looks like you're going to be able to add your own kernels as well. So we won't go too deep into this. Is more of a Windows thing than a Linux thing, but interesting. For those of you that are stuck with WSL2, you might get some extra features. Awesome. All right, and that seems to be it for our news. Let's talk about security for just a minute. So in this update, we're going to talk a little bit about Evil Gnome. We saw this come out about a week-ish ago, and while it's probably not going to affect us too terribly much, because it looks like this comes from installing a malicious GNOME shell extension, and in Mint, we don't really install GNOME shell extensions, so it's not something that we would accidentally pick up most of the time. But I guess for those of us that like to go download a bunch of software and double-click on it all and hope for the best, this might affect you. So I'm going to go over a couple of things that you might want to look out for.
It has been said this is the first malware written for the Linux desktop.
Yeah, and I don't know what to make of that. Is that a good thing? I mean, obviously it's not. It's malware, but is it a good thing?
Well, we're getting attention for a change.
Yeah, moving up in the world, baby.
That's it, right? So
before you know it, we're going to have content lockers and fake antivirus. It's going to be just like Windows.
I want a keylogger.
Ooh, well,
they
I
make
got some
those.
news for you on this keylogger. It's coming. So, Evil Gnome comes to us in a shell script, and it uses makeself to unpack and install itself. So, makeself itself is not actually bad. Some software uses it, VirtualBox uses it when you install with the deb, I believe. But it really is just there to make installations easier. You're not going to want to have to go out and make config, any of that junk, right, to actually compile your stuff. So makeself does a lot of that for you. But in this case, makeself is being used as the avenue to get this malware installed on your machine. And once you run it, once it's installed, it's going to put itself in a directory called .cache in your home folder, inside of another folder called gnome-software, and one more level down, gnome-shell-extensions. Inside of there, you might find a file called gnome-shell.ext.sh. So that's a bunch of levels down, but it looks to me that we don't actually have, by default in Linux Mint, a gnome-software directory. So if you have that directory, pop it open, take a look, go into .cache, see if you have a gnome-software. If you do, look underneath and see if you have that gnome-shell-extensions, and if you do that, see if you have that gnome-shell-ext shell script. That seems to be the telltale marker of whether or not you have it. So take a look. We shouldn't have those directories, but if you do, don't panic. Just delete some stuff. And if you can't do it, email us, and maybe we can help you out with that. And it looks like this thing can do quite a few things. It can listen into your microphone. It can take screenshots of your desktop. It can scan directories for new files that are being created. And it seems like there are some other things that it can do as well. Like it has a module in it called Shooter Ping that will allow it to ping a command and control center, so you can be bot-netted, I guess. And then it looks like it also has something called Shooter Key, which looked to be a key logger. So Moss, there you go. And it doesn't seem like it's finished though, which means it doesn't look like the key logger is actually logging keys, but the functionality was halfway there, which means if you have this, just assume you've been keylogged. It probably doesn't work, but then again, it's never been a better time to nuke and pave, right?
Always have two-factor.
Yeah, always have
It's
two-factor.
not
That
perfect
always helps out.
protection, but it would protect against keylogging.
Yep, exactly. So if you have that directory, don't panic, but look into it a little bit deeper. And we've got some links in the show notes that we'll have for you to read in a little deeper on that. But keep an eye out for Evil Gnome. So now we're moving into our Linux Innards section. All right, so in this section, we're going to be talking about what in the heck got us into Linux in the first place, and then kind of as an extension, what got us into the mintCast as well. And we're going to be roasting Moss today. So
I make a complaint about starting up mintCast with me taking over the whole show, and you start up mintCast and I'm taking over the whole show again.
I'm just saying, like, I thought we were 3 episodes into mintCast already.
I have not taken over yet.
Well, Moss, then I really want to know, what got you into Linux in the first place? Was it the freeness?
Well, I started playing with Linux in the early 2000s. I never was comfortable in Microsoft once they tried to push Windows at you. It's like Windows was something they shoved on top of DOS, and DOS was fine, but Windows just never was quite right. And so in the early 2000s, I got Slackware and Red Hat disks, but I was too timid to look up all the information on all my cards. I finally got a version of Mandrake to run. It was fun, but not ready to replace all the things I was doing, so I kept it around for a while. Then Mandrake had a numerical upgrade, which would not work on my computer. So then I tried SUSE just before they started the OpenSUSE project, and it ran, but it was strictly niche at that point. My next door neighbor, John, played with things and eventually had 2 Windows boxes, a homemade Hackintosh, and a Fedora box, all networked. And years later, he passed and bequeathed all those computers to me. I still have 2 of them. I sold some of them to get the laptop we've been talking about earlier. When XP users were being pushed to Windows 7, I moved to Ubuntu GNOME, and then Ubuntu moved to Unity, and that wouldn't run on my computer, and I went back to Win 7. It had gotten a little bit better press, and I decided it was worth trying again. I had some Windows 8 and 8.1 computers and got over that, went back to 7. And then they tried to force me to Windows 10. I tried it, saw all the open holes, found I couldn't close all the security holes, went back to Windows 7, found most of the holes were left open, so I installed Linux Mint 17 and have not gone back. Although I played with a lot of other distros, Linux has grown substantially in the last 15 years and is now, in my opinion, a better system than Windows.
That's always good. I kind of feel the same way about the better than Windows, to be honest with you. Outside of games, there's just nothing that my Linux machines won't do better, it seems like.
And since I don't game, that's not even an issue.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my downfall right now is that I have some games that just don't play very well on the Linux side. So, kind of a sad story, but oh well.
And I'd be willing to argue and say it's not that Windows does games better; it just does more of them.
Well, yeah, I mean they cornered the market with DirectX. That was the whole issue there, and then everything started using DirectX. So we're stuck. That's what DXVK is for, and it's getting better every iteration. Well, Moss, what is it that you love the most about Linux then?
2 words: variety, fragmentation, if you will. If you want to make something different, whether better or not, you can, or you can find large groups of people working on it that'll do it for you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the fragmentation here lately, and Bo even mentioned the article in the last show, and I guess
It's
I'll
a
mention
paper
it again.
tiger.
But yeah,
It-
and so that seems to be some people's sore spot, though. The fragmentation is just something that people don't want. Yeah, I'm in
But
agreement
without
with
the
you.
fragmentation, you don't have the variety. You're just stuck in Windows or Mac OS again.
Exactly right. Just imagine if everybody had to use Ubuntu GNOME and that was it.
Well, pick any distro and desktop. Just that's all you can use. KDE Neon. Yeah, it's fun, but it's still just KDE Neon.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what attracts people, the choice.
It got me.
Well, what are you running right now? What are your main distros?
Well, my current favorites are a tie between Linux Mint and Bodhi 5. Bodhi still has some growing to do, and Linux Mint can get boring at times, but Linux Mint always gets stuff done whenever I'm trying to get something done, and I sometimes try and do it in something else, but then when that doesn't work, I just boot back to Linux Mint. I've got a lot of other distros going. I don't even remember what all I have right now. Tune in to Distro Hoppers Digest.
Yeah. What is Bodhi based on?
Bodhi is based on Ubuntu, but it uses the Moksha desktop, which is a fork of Enlightenment E17. And it's a lot of fun. There's nothing like it. But there are still bugs in it.
Yeah, I was looking at a screenshot, and it looks like they're based on Ubuntu, but are using... Is that Arc, or is that Mint Y? Because that looks like Mint Y.
Well, I might be using Mint Y right now, but I don't even mess with the themes. I generally just use what they've got. There's enough variety in the distro itself without having to play with it.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know enough about Arc to know what the difference is, but one might be a fork of the other, to be honest.
Could be. Don't know.
Interesting. All right. Well, so you've been on the show for quite a while, and I think settled in and kind of got a feel for everything. So, if you had to make some choices on it, where would you want mintCast to go the next 12 months?
Well, we seem to be a bit short on ideas for new topics and can use more community input on that subject. I sometimes feel like I'm under-teched for what we're doing. Like you want to do a show on security or a show on pies or something, and I don't have the money to pour into it to get started and set up and running, and I don't have the technical experience to be able to really put anything into it. And at times I'm very strained for time and may have to eventually decide to leave the show. But people complain we have too many hosts now, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Well, for two of the things, I guess one of them, leaving the show, we just had somebody come in and say that the number of people is the right number of people. So I know that not everybody agrees with that, but it's just nice
whether it's the right number or not, it's a fun number. I have a lot of fun at this show. It feels almost like a users group.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the listeners have been saying that we have the right number and the dynamic works well. And it's good to have people of different experience levels talking on the same subjects because we have different experience leveled users. So,
Yeah, that was
our
another thing
listeners.
that we have in the feedback coming up is that you need to keep that because just as we were talking about before, like you forget where you came from, like you forget the little paper cuts that got you to where you are now, and then you don't remember how hard it was or whatever. So having someone that doesn't have that experience is always a plus because you have a different view of what it looks like.
Well, the fact that it's so much fun with the guys that show up is part of what's keeping me around here because I do feel undereducated for a lot of this. I feel underexperienced, but it's just so much fun. I've got other things I should be doing that instead I'm spending time on this show.
The perils of a free show, huh?
I guess.
All right. Well, let's say you just installed, I don't know, Linux Mint 19.2. What are your must-have applications for a fresh install?
I take a lot of heat for this. Everyone goes, open software, open software. I use SoftMaker Office. SoftMaker has been publishing an Office package for Linux since 2008. It works better than any other Office package I've used. I have worked as a professional editor and have had to try this out. LibreOffice has messed up more documents than I can count. So I go back to SoftMaker. It's not free, it's not open source, but it's cheap, and it is completely compatible with Microsoft except for what they just added in the latest edition. I always have to have Firefox if it's not included. Because we're doing the show, I have to have Audacity. I should also be using that for some music production, but that's one of the things that's going by the wayside because I'm doing this show. I put Stacer on. It's a really fun thing for checking what's going on my machine. It gives me a lot of hands-on to the tools in the program. I've got to have Discord and Telegram desktop to follow my groups. I've got to install my printer, of course, which I use an MFC J291DW by Brother. For the purposes of the show, I've got to have Mumble. And I always install a very minimum suite of games, which includes K-Mines, K-Mahjong, K-Netwalk, NetHack, I usually use X11, and Pysol FC.
So what is Stacer exactly?
Stacer is a suite of, well, here, let me open up my dashboard here. I've got how much CPU is being used, how much memory is being used, how much disk space is being used, my download and upload speeds, what my system info is. I can go and turn on and off startup applications. I can clear caches. I can add things to startup services. It's just an all-around tool that I think everyone needs to have. It'll show me what my CPU history is and my CPU load, my disk write history, my memory history, my network history. It's all right here in Stacer.
So it's like a system monitor on steroids.
Oh, yeah. And it's graphical, which is good for some of us and not good for others.
Yeah, I think Stacer really just kind of gives System Monitor a facelift and adds in the functionality of a lot of the other applications that are out there just right into one window. So I don't see anything, and I'm looking at it right now, I don't see anything in Stacer that is unique to Stacer except for the cleaner part, the system cleaner, where it'll like empty your trash, empty your application caches, empty your application logs, crash reports, package caches. But I mean, all these tools are built into the system. So I guess what I'm wondering about Stacer is how does it know? Well, I guess it just queries what package
That's
manager
your
you have
research
installed.
to do, Leo.
Yeah, well, I don't use Stacer enough. I honestly had learned a lot of the real tools that are bundled with the DE, so I don't bother with it too much. But it's really good. If you don't want to have to learn all that, Stacer is great because it's all right here, and you just go down through it and decide what you like and what you want to mess with. It's really cool. All right, was that the last question? Did we already make it to the end?
Nope, there's one more.
One more.
Yeah, shoot. Yep, it was right there too. So overall, I guess we kind of as a group have decided that we're not going to monetize the show, or at least there hasn't been enough incentive and we just haven't decided to do it. So we don't monetize. What is your reasoning for that, Moss?
Well, I could really use the money, unlike a lot of the people here. I don't see myself as a professional podcaster, and the other guys don't need the money. So unless I have a patron system for just me and can justify people say, well, I'm the only guy on mintCast that you should be donating to. So unless I could justify that, we're not going there.
So it sounds like to me you need to be a professional podcaster, because there's been so many times where people come in and say, I love Moss's voice.
I need to have an income. I don't know if I need to have it from my podcasting. But I always look down on the ways I could possibly make money. My best year has been like 26,000 for the year, and that's not a good year for most people.
Yeah, it's tough to get by on that for sure.
Well, it helps that I'm living in a moderately nice trailer in eastern Tennessee that I'm only paying $4.25 a month for. But just the fact that I've cut my expenses doesn't mean that I wouldn't rather be living in a little bit nicer place or having more money to spend on gas or going places or eating out or something, because we're really stretched right now.
Absolutely.
Well, that's me. I think we're done here.
Yeah, that's about it. The last of the questions.
How have you you sell your music online, right?
I try to. I have music for sale online. Nobody's buying it.
I can relate to that. Yeah. Yeah, you should consider maybe doing a Patreon or something for your musicianship.
Well, I also have Triad Bardic College that I'm supposedly putting back together. It's fallen by the wayside for years, and they handed it over to me to turn it around, and I haven't had the time and energy and ideas to do that just yet. But I'm having so much fun podcasting, you know?
Yeah. And you normally have links to your music in the show notes. Be sure those are there this time.
Well, most of the links are there, aren't they?
I believe they are. I'm just saying, just double check.
Yeah, all of my lyrics are on my website of the stuff I've written, whether it's to my own tune or someone else's. I'm not bad when I can write. I see my muse seems to have checked out on me, but I can still do a good job. I've been getting a lot of traction doing other people's songs that aren't being heard as much. And I do have some videos on YouTube, either under my name or my wife's name, or Prince Shoko 1 is my old friend, Robert Warren, and he's got a lot of videos just sitting in his living room and recording me.
All right. Well, that's it for our questions. So we'll head on to the vibrations from the ether. All right, so in this section, we have a ton of listener feedback. There's another email that had come in right before the show that we didn't get that we didn't get enough time to really look at, and one that I'm going to shoot from the hip on. So we'll see how.
And
this
there's
goes.
a YouTube comment too. If did you see that?
Ooh, let's see.
Look
so we'll
in your
start off
Rumble.
with this one. Do you do a guide to using Mint, keeping it simple? We don't, but we probably could. There's Paul, I guess there is a what is it? It's not a wiki. It's like like how to install it, how to get Timeshift set up, and all of that basic stuff that the things that make Linux Mint. That is, I'll have to find a link. So Paul Hill in the YouTube comments, take a look. I'll try and bring the link to YouTube as well. But take a look in our show notes as well, and I'll have a link to that how-to. So we don't, but Linux Mint does, and we'll give you that.
And I'll also add that we've in the past we've covered specific topics around using Linux Mint and detail, but there's a YouTube channel called Learning Linux that has a series on installing and setting up Linux Mint.
Yeah, and like episode 311 and 312, if I remember correctly, were both about file sharing. So if that's something that you want to do, you might want to go check out those episodes if you haven't already.
So the short answer is stay subscribed and check out Learning Linux and also the Linux Mint website.
Definitely. I'll get that link out to you. So we have this message, Jim from Raleigh. He says, "Hey guys, I've recently changed my distro of choice to Mint, specific Mint flavor. My finger memory is used to Compiz, which I started using in 2007.
The what flavor?
Mate. Mate. Of all the desktop environments available, Mate does the best job of blending with Compiz, and it's comfortable and very configurable. My last OS install was Ubuntu 1904. About one time in 4, when opening my suspended laptop, it would come up with no keyboard or mouse, requiring a hold the power button restart. Across the room from where my laptop is, my wife's identical laptop with Windows 7, which is only rebooted when Patch Tuesday requires it. They're 7-year-old Idea pads. Hers is on the original hard drive and the original OS install. Anyway, the hold the power button behavior is unacceptable. Before that, it had been testing. While it was reasonably stable, it had some tearing on the screen over issues, so it sounds like screen tearing on a secondary monitor, where I would say have an IDE open on one screen and the datasheet of the device I'm programming on the next, and the datasheet picture would get corrupted. Not good. So I have 2 peripheral devices that I use quite frequently, an external SATA hard drive dock and a NAS built around an espresso bin SBC. I've tried to build NAS boxes from Raspberry Pis, Pogo plugs, and old laptops, and found that if you connect your data hard drive with a USB, it might not disconnect today or tomorrow, but eventually you will try to bring the NAS up on your computer and there will be no data available. So the espresso bin stays connected forever because it has a SATA port and a 5 plus 12 volt connect for hard drive power. Or if you really want a multi-purpose box, it has 2 separate Ethernet ports that you can use for a firewall router. Anyway, with either Ubuntu or Debian, in order to connect the hard drive dock, you have to power down the computer, plug in the cable, then power it back up. And then it shows up in Kaha. Oh. Hang on.
I've never been sure if that was Kaja or Kaha.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
the last time I
Kaha.
said Kaja on
Trust
the
me.
show. And well, trust you, huh?
I
Somebody's
always
always
say
going to
Kaja.
complain about the pronunciation,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
you get it right or not.
Yeah, because I mean, there's like cajon, which is like a drawer or whatever, and I guess that's what that word comes from. But yeah. Anyway, let me see if I can find where I was. It signed me out of my show notes, so I got all confused and flustered. So anyway, if the drive has more than one partition, it takes another power cycle to remove it. With Mint, it's like USB. Plug it in, and it appears in Kaja. Same for the NAS. Anyhow, he's got some additional information on how to kind of make it work. But the idea is that it didn't work in either of the 2 main desktop environments or distros, Ubuntu and Debian, but it did work in Mint. So
It
I sent
always
him an email
works
back.
in Mint. Everything
know.
always just works in Mint.
I'm telling you, it's just so nice. So anyway, I kind of say as much in my response. I say, first off, sorry for the delayed response. Yeah, so I had been, so I was talking about it earlier in the show that work has been overwhelming lately, and that's still kind of the case. So anyway, it's been hectic, but so glad to hear Mint is doing what you need. The things you're talking about are the same types of things that have me coming back to Mint after a distro hop, and that's so true. I come back all the time. On my laptop, I never leave it. There are just so many things that are already figured out, and you don't realize until you have to do without them. I got a soft spot for Compiz as well. When Wobbly Windows came out, I was sold. It even fixes things like screen tearing with Marco, which is why I use Mate and Compiz on my HTPC. So lower memory footprint and smooth scrolling. What's not to love? I have a similar issue with external drive docks, but only had to power cycle the drive dock when changing drives around. Otherwise, they wouldn't be detected. So it's like this little dock that I have. It's like a toaster. You just slide the drives in on top. And unless you power it down and then power it back up, the drives don't get seen by the desktop. So I guess that's the toaster and not the machines, because it does that on Windows and Linux. Anyway, for the eSATA dock, that's unfortunate. I have a USB 3 4TB drive on my NAS, and then a 1TB same thing on a Fedora 30 machine, and never really had those drop off. But my Fedora machine, for some reason, will just not boot with the USB drive plugged in sometimes, and it's hit or miss. It's not always. So I thought it was the boot order in which I had it. Maybe the USB drive was showing up there, but it didn't seem like that was the case. But it's been so long, I probably just need to go back and look at it. So anyway, that espresso bin sounded really awesome, so I asked for a link to buy one, but I don't know, they seem a little older, so I might not be able to get my hands on one.
The love for the wobbly window thing cracked me up, but who remembers the Cube desktop switcher?
Oh, that was the other killer feature, man.
Yeah. It was like, I really am living in the future. My desktop switcher is cubed.
Oh, yeah, it's so cool. And you could like zoom it back and then control the cube manually instead of it just flipping. Because the flipping was great, but the ability to do it is just so nice.
It's hilarious that no one implements that anymore.
You can still in Linux Mint Mate, you can swap your compositor to Compiz, and when you go into the configurator for it, they're in there. Those options are still there. So if you want to, you totally could.
I found one on eBay and I put it in the show notes.
Nice, very cool. I'll have to take a look because it had like 3 network cards, man. I was like, for a makeshift router, that would be really cool. I guess as long as you don't need it to do a lot, because it seemed like OpenWRT was native to it, or it supported it natively, or something like that.
Oh, it does say this item is out of stock.
Yeah, so I think it's an older box, but if I could get my hands on one, I would definitely tinker with it. It seemed like a beefed up Raspberry Pi with better ports and everything. Anyway. Next email message was from Benjamin Moser. He says, "Hey folks, support for ARM 32-bit is alive and well for now. It's just x86 32-bit that'll be dropped. They still can't drop everything though, probably for another decade. I'm figuring right, it'll be close to 38-ish years old by then." And I sent an email back saying, "We love our old software. I wouldn't doubt if 32-bit libs will last forever in some way. Thanks for the info." And
32 bit's gonna outlive 64 bit somehow.
I promise you that we'll find some kind of weird compatibility layer to put into ARM so that we can still run 32-bit software. I guarantee it. It's just that's what's gonna happen. It's gonna be like DOSBox, I guess, right? Where there'll just always be that app that you can run, and it's not very fast, but by the time we get to that point, ARM will be so amazing, or we'll be on RISC or something like that the performance hit won't even be noticeable anymore. Okay, we talked about this before the show. I'm not positive how to say this last name, so I'm going to try and not butcher it. So someone else read this name out for me.
Stan Rickhart.
All right.
I think that's it.
So Stan
Rickhart
emails in saying, on the Twit TV website, in their listing of shows, they have one named Floss Weekly. They interviewed Linux project leaders. Drill down to their pages, they have a public Floss Weekly guest spreadsheet. Of note, check and you can see that Clement Lefebvre is in there. Agreed to a show, negotiating dates. No idea when, but on the list. Huh, I did not know this. So I email back, wow, what a find. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on this one. If you hear of any more details, feel free to message us again. So, Clem's on the list, all. I'm going to have to keep my eyes open for that, because I really want to see this. So I wonder how old that is. Maybe we just need to go into the back channel and ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I check out Floss Weekly from time to time, and I haven't caught an episode where they've mentioned Clem being on there.
Yeah,
which
I've
had
been
to see.
meaning. I've been meaning to get into more of the Twitch shows, but Security Now is already 2 hours long, and I can barely get through that in a week. So, like, adding on more shows is really hard to do.
Yeah, there's so much information in security now. It takes me like 5 days to listen to an episode.
Yeah, I'm just glad that most of my podcasts come in pretty staggered, so I have like a queue that happens. All right, and it looks like Joe wants to take on Brad Alexander.
Yeah, this one seemed more directed towards me. I know you responded to it, but that's because I didn't get to it. So I'm going to read this one
And he
out.
gave me a little shout out.
Yeah. Hey guys, just wanted to clear up a couple of points about ZFS from episode 313. First of all, Joe, you said that you didn't have a use case for ZFS. Well, that is purely your decision. Let me tell you a couple of the use cases that I have. First, I have ZFS running on multiple USB devices, including hard drives and even some larger thumb drives. I do this because I run a combination of FreeBSD and Linux machines, and ZFS is very close to being the universal file system. It is supported in FreeBSD, Linux, Solaris, or at least the Open Solaris variants, Mac, and there is even a port for Windows. I like the idea of being able to potentially plug a thumb drive into most any machine and be able to mount the file system. So those are single disk pools. I am also running a 2-disk striped pool on my Lenovo W520 laptop, the last one with the good keyboard, running FreeBSD 12. My desktop is running 2 mirrored pairs, 256 gigabyte SSDs and 1 terabyte spinning disks, and is running FreeBSD 12. Finally, I have my FreeNAS box with a 6 to 3 terabyte RAID Z2. My FreeNAS box has ECC RAM, but the desktop and laptop... Okay, I guess there's something missing there. Okay, Leo is also right. ZFS does error checking and thus combats bit rot. It is marginally less effective if you are not doing ECC RAM or if you only have the one drive, but it is still better than not using it. And for the record, the 1 gigabyte of RAM per terabyte of storage is a wives' tale. The only time you would need that much RAM is if you were using deduplication. At the present time, all of my machines have 16 gigabyte of RAM, including the FreeNAS. The FreeNAS ran on 8 gigabyte of RAM for most of its 5 years, and for a few months was running on 4 gigabyte. The capacity of the array is 16.2 terabytes. If I were using dedupe, I would need 64 gigabytes or more of RAM, and as I said, the desktop and laptop are not even using ECC. I would give it a shot, at least start on an external drive. Oh, and Joe, I have a couple of questions for you. I think that a podcast on ebooks or audiobooks would be interesting. I don't listen to as many audiobooks as I'd like to because I have enough podcasts that sometimes I can't finish it through in a week's commuting. Also, does Audible work on or work with Linux/BSD? Okay, before we get to Leo's response on the rest of it, let me answer that question right there. Audible kind of works on Linux. I mean, you can download your books using Audible's website and go through, and there's even a couple of applications other people have made for organizing your library, and that can pull the audio for the audiobooks. And then you can take those files and you can convert them to, something playable using, FFmpeg or any of the other tools that are already out there to do it. But as for working natively and playing and syncing up with your other devices, no, that's not really there. Okay, and then Leo, did you want to read your response?
Sure will. Let me see here. Where am I at? Oh yeah, so he'd kind of directed a couple of things at me, so I wanted to get back to him with those. But for my for my mentions in your email, I think I'll go back up and dig up what the recommended RAM amounts are then, because he had said that you don't need the 1 gig per terabyte. And I remember on a BSD Now, I think
Yeah.
it was, or one
Yeah, it
of
was
the
BSD
BSD
Now.
shows. Okay, so Alan Jude had kind of come back and kind of dispelled that myth a little bit. But yeah, the fact that he had said that there are some use cases where you would want that is the biggest reason that kind of kept me away from it. So if it's just for dedupe, then I'll have to reconsider. But the other thing was that you mentioned that you're using ZFS as your all-around file system for everything. So I use exFAT for that. And I have to install a module in Linux, or the exFAT utils, exFAT fuse in Linux to get it to run. If I could swap that out for whatever it is in Windows, I think that's
Right.
preferable to me.
Doesn't exFAT have a 4 gigabyte size limitation?
No, that's just FAT32.
Just
exFAT
FAT32,
removed
okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the biggest reason I use exFAT, because I have ISOs that are like 6-7 gigs that Windows specifically that I have put on there, and exFAT takes care of that pretty handily. But yeah, so if I can start formatting my flash drives in ZFS, that's going to be a really nice dip my toes into the water with ZFS. And the fact that it wasn't confirmed, I don't know if it's confirmed yet, but the last I looked, which is a couple of weeks ago, it was not confirmed that Ubuntu was going to be adding ZFS. There was like a request
ZFS?
for it. Yeah, and it was going to be part of the installer or something like that. So I don't think that was official, but it was officially for. So we'll put it that way. So if that comes to fruition, and I don't have to go in and add anything to ZFS or add anything to Ubuntu for ZFS or Mint for ZFS, then I think you might have sold me, Brad. This is like the third time we've kind of back and forth about ZFS, and it took as many times to get me converted. So if that happens, if the Ubuntu thing happens, I'll be on the ZFS train for life. Okay, maybe not for life, but for a while, for sure. All right, and we have another email from Highlander, and this one kind of made me cock my head to the side a little bit, and I'm like, but we'll see. So let's get through this real quick. So after trying out Kali Linux XFCE 2019.2, I found a weird error. It took a long time to figure out what was going wrong. I successfully booted into the distro and logged on to a source of Wi-Fi. Problem started when I used Firefox to look at the weather forecast, and errors showed up in Firefox that I didn't understand initially. Data flow was not flowing. Turns out that the internal clock on the local machine was far behind the clock on the internet. Kali blocked the flow of data. Kali Linux didn't tell me the cause of the problem, but the error in Firefox helped me to suss out the real issue of the problem was a hardware CMOS error. Reset the internal clock within the BIOS, then rebooted into the Kali distro. Data flow through Wi-Fi was restored. I hope future versions of Kali Linux can deal with hardware issues better than this. So I didn't email back, but I will probably go type what I say in an email. So there's a couple of different issues that you're running into on this particular thing. Number one, and I guess this falls more into the side, but even the Kali guys say so. Run Kali in a VM. It's not meant to be run on machine in any way to replace a daily driver at all. It's a machine with a lot of insane defaults. So it's probably not best to run it as a daily driver. Though if you want to, you can totally configure it to be a daily driver. But I don't know. I don't know why you'd walk around with so many of those tools jingling around on your keyring. But then again, that's not really my place to say what you like. So anyway,
I don't think it would be recommended.
Right, it's definitely not recommended from the project. But the other thing is that it's not Kali's fault about that CMOS thing, but it is. Well, I guess it's not really Kali's fault that it didn't tell you about that error either. So the issue that's going on is that your clock has to match an HTTPS certificate's timestamp. It has to be within a threshold for that certificate to remain valid. Otherwise, if your clock is way, way off, no certificate you get off of any secure website is ever going to match up, so you're going to get that error in Firefox. And you'd have gotten the same error in Chrome or Chromium or Brave or any other browser. But you're right. It does stem from your system clock being incorrect. So Kali does not pull the right time in from your system. Therefore, if it doesn't use an NTP server to get the correct time and adjust, yeah, your internet's basically going to be broken because pretty much everything is HTTPS now. So this is not something that Kali can fix. You, though, and I cannot remember the command for the life of me. I might try to add this into the show notes afterward. There's a command, maybe it's like system CTL clock or system clock or something like that, that you can copy the system time to the Linux time and then the Linux time to the system time. You can go one or the other way with it. That might help you with this issue, but yeah, overall, if your clocks are wrong, your internet's going to be busted. So this is more to do with the CMOS than Kali. And then I guess no DE would really tell you too terribly much about whether or not your clock is wrong. Just keep an eye on it, I guess. But I could have sworn Kali has NTP servers, so maybe there was something else going on down there too. Oh, hang on, I think I broke my I broke my machine. Here we go. So we have one more message. I think it's one. Yeah, one more message from Kurt Matz. He says, "Hi guys. I know you spoke a little bit about LVM in the encryption show. I was wondering, do you think it's worth using LVM on a laptop with a single SSD? I set it up and converted my partition-based install to LVM of Arch. Not trivial. FS Archiver is amazing. I use System Rescue CD and it can't boot into the existing OS anymore. I had an ISO partition that I couldn't figure out how to boot from Grub to find the ISO off the hard disk. It's simple things like this that I can't get working anymore. I put ISOs on an NTFS partition and Grub boots from it. It seems using LVM complicated a few things, and I realize resizing and creating new partitions in the LVM is going to be easier. How much would you really do that on an SSD in a laptop, you know? What are your thoughts?" So I sent him an email a little before we got into the show, and I say, I run my laptop with a 500 gig SSD without any LVM, just one single Linux Mint primary partition. So my opinion is, unless you use LVM snapshots or have tons and tons of partitions a la MOS, it's not really worth the hassle of logical volumes. I agree with your sentiment too, though. I don't think I've resized a partition in any way since getting this laptop. Reinstalling? Sure, but never resized. I just give the whole disk to the OS. One thing, though, your comment about putting ISOs on an NTFS partition. I hadn't ever thought to do that. Now I have to go try. So do y'all know about this? Can Grub really boot from an ISO, just a straight ISO file?
I know nothing about LVM, but I do my resizing using gparted, if anything.
Well, using logical partitions. So I guess in your case, they're extended partitions, and LVM is kind of a layer above that where you can like resize and change and move and flip flop and do whatever you want to with your partitions. So it makes things a little easier if you do a lot of partition stuff.
No, I hadn't considered that either. The putting the ISOs on an NTSF or NTFS partition and then booting straight from them. Is that what he was saying?
That sounds like what he was saying. So I'm not 100% sure. So I'll have to look into that. That might actually be a thing, and I just didn't know about it.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, heck yeah. So, Kurt, if you can tell us how to do that, that would be really cool. All right, and that's the end of our feedback. We had a bunch of feedback this past couple of weeks, so I'm glad you sent it all in. And because we're splitting the show, we can spend a little bit more time on the feedback and just kind of commiserate a little bit about all the weird stuff that's going on. But for now, we can head on into Check This Out. All right, and Moss and Joe, you have some Check This Out goodies. So Moss, what do you have for us?
Well, the first item up is the $200 Linux laptop Pinebook Pro is available for pre-order. We've talked about this some already today. Pre-order for the device is open. So if you want to get in on Pine 64 goodness, Linux on ARM, you can't beat the price. Give it a shot. Link in the show notes. Dropbox is bringing back support for ZFS, XFS, ButterFS, and eCryptFS on Linux. A lot of people on other shows have said, so what? You've already blown me away. I've already blown my Dropbox away.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was also been some recent complaints on other podcasts about Dropbox used to be this really tiny, lightweight tool, and now it's just blown up and huge and takes up a lot of resources, especially on Macs.
Well, I use Box.com myself, and there is not a Linux native app for that, but it's still the largest free storage offline.
Check and see if you can do a fuse mount for Box.com.
Oh, there are a few things I can try, but they all involve doing more stuff than I'm capable of doing at the present. The other thing, as suggested earlier in the show, we've got a link for LBRY. Under the frequently asked questions, there is a note that says, first and foremost, LBRY is a new protocol which allows anyone to build apps that interact with digital content on the LBRY network. Apps built on the protocol allow creators to upload their work to the LBRY network of hosts like BitTorrent and set a price per stream or download like iTunes, or give it away for free like YouTube without ads. So if you want to get away from Google, there is a place you can get paid for your content or give it away free if that's what you want to do. It's called LBRY.
And I have included a link to the App Image GitHub, which has a list of a lot of the available app images that you can download and start using. Now, it does not cover all of the app images that are out there, but it is a nice central repository to get started looking at what's available.
Very cool. I love that image site, by the way, because I go there all the time. It's really hard to find app images anywhere else. Krita is the only one that I know that links directly to their own app image, but
Right.
I like to use GIMP.
Etcher.
Go ahead.
Yeah, GIMP and Etcher, VLC,
Oh,
if you
yeah,
want the most
Etcher.
recent one. There's Cura. I use Cura. But essentially, if you want an app image that isn't included there, you got to search by the application name and app image and see if someone has made one.
Yep, and this is what really got me into putting the junk into bin so that I can just type the name. Makes it so much easier. All right. And for announcements, we have been kicking around this idea in our Mumble weekly Saturday meetings of this is a community podcast, right? Something that we do for the community. So I'm kicking around this idea of what if we brought the community to us? And kind of the way that we did Moss's interview, we'd like to interview you too. And you meaning you, as in you right now listening. If you have something interesting or different or anything to say, email us or message us, and then we can try and figure out how to best add you to the show. So, community, let's do that.
Right, our show isn't long enough already.
No,
it's shorter
We need
today.
to add a whole nother hour.
Especially if we're going to keep splitting it up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so every hour that we do, we'll just split it again. We'll just have a third and a fourth and a fifth show. We'll just keep
Right.
doing it.
We'll just spend 24 hours recording, and then we'll release sections of it every day of the week.
Exactly. And then we'll I think I'm going to try and email a few people and see if anybody's willing to come on and chat with us for a little bit. I think that'll be fun. So anyway, as we wrap up the show, I want to take a little time and get everybody's input on where we can find more of you. So Joe, where can we find more of you?
Well, I'm on a couple other podcasts. The Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at www.tllts.org. I'm also on the Linux Lugcast, which is www.linuxlugcast.com. You can find me on MeWe, or you can email me at jb@mintcast.org. I usually do like answering technical questions.
Very cool. And Bo, where can we find more of you?
You can find the other podcast I do at undercastnetwork.com. And Joe, you can be on ECN Radio anytime you'd like in the future. Just let me know.
Are you recording again tomorrow?
Possibly, but the next scheduled episode is actually next Monday.
Okay. That's probably good. Give me a chance to go to the gym.
All right. You gonna have a camera this time or something?
I can set something up.
All right, well, definitely get some gym time in then. You got to be buff for ECN
Right.
Radio.
Oh, when are you going to get buff then?
Ooh, shots fired. And Moss, where can we find more of you?
Well, I'm found at Triad Bardic College. My website is Peaceful Hippo, and I have rediscovered my blog on Peaceful Hippo, so there will be some updates there from time to time. I can be found on MeWe. My music is on Bandcamp and all over YouTube. You have to search for me because I'm on several different people's channels. So you search for Moss Bliss and ignore the young black South African gospel singer. I think you can tell the difference. And you can find me, Moss, at mintcast.org or distrohoppersdigest@gmail.com.
Very cool. And Tony Hughes isn't here this go around, but you can find him on HPR. He does an occasional blog at tony-hughes.blogspot.com. And you can get him on Twitter at TonyH1212 or distrohopperdigest@gmail.com. And Tony Watts is also not here this time, but you can get him at tw@mintcast.org, or you can listen to his band Echoes of Savages. Just pop that into Google and it'll come up for you. And Josh, where can we find more of you?
You can find me, Josh, at mintcast.org, edgebox.org, or All About Code on Twitter.
Very cool. And certainly the least and definitely the last, Leo, you can find me at leochavez.org and at leochavez on Twitter, or weekly on Mondays, something like that. Full Circle Weekly News Podcast. And before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Josh, for working on redesigning our website, which it hasn't blown up yet, so I'm feeling really good about this site. He's the one that pulls the levers and pushes the button for the YouTube stream, and always providing lots of technical help when we need to get something up and running. And we want to thank Bytemark for hosting our hosting our new hosting server for our website. They're hosting our website and also hosting this Mumble channel this time around. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. The folks at Hacker Public Radio for the Mumble server we are temporarily not using this time, but thank you anyway, HPR. The Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about every fortnight.
Thanks, Clem.
Clem.
Thanks, Clem and Co.